Now, while electricity has been prioritized over water in terms of political significance, experts warn that water is a constitutionally enshrined human right that requires proper planning and financing. Now, the government has neglected water infrastructure, leading to a breakdown of institutional memory, as well as the ability of institutions to function. Now, this is quite evident in Hammanskraal, where there have been 23 deaths due to cholera. South African morning anchor, there's Gareth Edwards, is in Hammanskraal still and gives us this update. Well, G-Dog, a pleasure having you. Almost, giving me good old memories on the SA morning. But you are still in Hammanskraal, G, because, we're having this focus on water infrastructure, the contamination of water within, the community, but also residents saying, listen, we cannot afford to buy water, especially at a time when these tankers that were promised to provide clean water have now scaled down.
Yeah, absolutely. Morning, Timza. Morning, everyone. If you've just tuned in, welcome to Hammanskraal. We're some 47 kilometres north of Pretoria. Hammanskraal, the size of the area, about 7-8 kilometres round, with residents, the last census back in 2011, sitting at about 23,000 people. So it's very worrying in what is a fairly small area to be dealing with a cholera outbreak like this. What you're seeing behind me is the reservoir tankers of the Temba water treatment plant. Now, this is about 30 minutes north of the big issue, which is the Rooiwal water treatment plant. The two are linked. The one is feeding water down to this area, but Rooiwal is where the effluent water, all that unfiltered water, Timza, is being backed up. The quality of water from Rooiwal, which is being released into a local dam, which then comes down here to the Temba Waterworks treatment plant, is not clean enough for this particular plant to deal with the issue. That's my understanding, my brief understanding from hearing from experts this morning. But you're quite right. The issue is, while this is all being dealt with, as the mayor of Tshwane says, 2.5 billion rand to completely refurbish and upgrade and fix Rooiwal, they don't have the money for that. So their solution is 1.5 or 150 million rand, forgive me, 150 million rand for the next 3 years. So 150 million rand per year over the next 3 years to try and deal with Rooiwal. The problem is, right now, as you say, residents, it's not good enough for them. They want solutions now, because this problem has been around for more than a decade. To the point of the tankers, I was hearing from local councillors and community leaders earlier, you're quite right. The number of tankers which were being provided by the city to give clean drinking water to schools, the local clinic, and of course all these houses and the other areas in Hammanskraal, they have been scaled down. The question is, and no one seems to be able to answer it, is why has that happened? But all of this is exactly why we're doing this water focus here on eNCA. We've spoken to a number of experts this morning as well, trying to find solutions. We can't just keep on passing blame. One of those was Kevin Winter, who is a senior lecturer in environmental and geographical sciences at UCT. And he was very clear, speaking to us this morning on eNCA, that this particular problem could have easily been avoided. Why does he say that? Let's take a listen.
I think the cholera outbreak is an absolute tragedy. And yes, it can be avoided, and we should not have cholera in this country, given our wastewater treatment standards that we've kept, called SANS 241, which is a criteria for managing and monitoring water. And it has a number of microbiology, in other words, bacteria and particularly bacteria measures in place to avoid this kind of water treatment that eventually finds its way into people's homes, into taps and so on. So it is a tragedy, and one can only feel right now for the medical staff who are dealing with this crisis, but more importantly, over 200 patients right now and deaths of more than 23 people at this stage. It is a national tragedy that should be keeping our officials and our politicians awake at night.
But G, it still seems so that the source of this outbreak is still unknown.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And this is the issue right now. Yes, tests being done here at Temba. Obviously, they've done the testing at Rooival as well. It's the source. When we talk about the water source, where is this cholera coming from as well? Speaking to one of the councillors earlier, he was saying that there's still an issue of pit toilets that they're dealing with here in Hammanskraal as well. He is suggesting that possibly what could be happening is those pit toilets are being essentially the water, the grey water, the brown water from there is flowing directly into the Arpies River, which is just down the road from here as well, which, as we all know, these water networks are very intrinsically linked as well. So he thinks that could be one of the causes, not the cause, but the point right now is everyone is scrambling, those experts, local councillors, local authorities, the city of Tshwane and even national government to a certain degree to try and find the root cause of this cholera outbreak, which takes me very nicely to another interview that I did with very well-known Professor Anthony Turton, water expert, joining us this morning. And he says before anything is done, there needs to be a root cause analysis. Find out what is actually causing this, to your point, Tumza, before you start throwing huge sums of money at it. Let me remind you of the sums of money that we've been hearing from the authorities. 2.5 billion rand to fix up Rooival from the city mayor, that's the city of Tshwane Mayor Celia Brink. As I was saying, that they don't have in their budget. It's their entire budget for the city. So they don't have that kind of money. So they're saying 150 million rand a year for 3 years to try and get on top of this problem. But here's where I'm going to with Professor Turton. He was saying before you throw any money at any possible solution, after you found out the problem, you need to deal with the syndicates that are involved in the situation here in Hammanskraal and other places around the country. But he was very clear what he thinks is happening. It's syndicates getting their fingers into our water infrastructure. Here's what he had to say.
We need to do a root cause analysis, but for some reason government does not to do that. They don't want to do a root cause analysis. And why don't they want to do that? Because it's actually not the ailing infrastructure that's causing the problem. That is a manifestation of the problem. The root cause of all of that is the fact that the procurement systems in the different municipalities have been essentially hijacked by syndicates, and therefore they are directing the flow of cash out of those the coffers into their private bank accounts, etc., by getting contracts for politically connected people. So the manifestation of the problem is the failing infrastructure, but the root cause of the problem is in fact this criminalization or the capture of the procurement process. So therefore, and this is important what I want to say now, therefore, just to simply throw another 2 billion rand at the problem is not going to solve the problem. Why? Because that 2 billion rand is merely going to be redirected into the coffers of the politically connected people. And this is what always happens. This is where we saw exactly the same thing happening in the Mfuleni wastewater works, where about 3 billion rand was spent on trying to fix the sewage works there in the Vereniging area. And guess what? They're still dysfunctional to this very day. So after 3 billion rand, not one iota of change has been brought about, and exactly the same is going to happen in the Hammanskraal case, but we will have spent 2.5 billion rand on solving a perceived problem without doing a root cause analysis. So we need to do a root cause analysis.
I mean, from what Anthony Turton is saying, G, it sounds like this outbreak could have been avoided. Political influence, corruption at the heart of the manifestation of what we're seeing right now. And I suppose echoing also the sentiments of other experts saying a depoliticized state staff as well as competent experts is what we need right now, so that 2.5 billion right now that's needed is not going back to the same people that may, of course, poke holes at that procurement system. We'll have to leave it there, but thanks, G, for giving us this update out in Hammanskraal. That's Gareth Edwards, the SA morning anchor, making sure that we are, of course, up to date and abreast with all that's happening, not only in Hammanskraal. There's a reflection as well, just to mention, of other parts of the country. We saw this happening in Vaal. We saw this happening with the sewage spillage out in Beaches and Cape Town, as well as in KwaZulu-Natal. And now 23 deaths due to this cholera outbreak. And still, we haven't heard officially from, of course, government just in in terms of what the root problem and cause is that has caused this very much avoidable outbreak.